Hello and welcome to another digital marketing strategy podcast. We're doing this live as in the last couple of episodes. And this week we're going to be talking about digital marketing strategy and how to build on for yourself and your business this year. And let's be honest, it's going to be another year of ups and downs, and there's going to be a lot of changes ahead. We have to adapt to the last round of changes that came in 2024. So there is a shifting landscape when it comes to new players in the search market, with ChatGPT and Perplexity causing a bit of a stir, as you probably know at this point. Algorithm updates going to happen not only on Google, but also on social media. Every kind of platform is changing the way that it showcases content to you, and how you engage with it then plays into the algorithm updates for the future. So you have to be aware of all this stuff that's happening for you to be able to do an effective strategy for 2025. Budgets too are changing. I imagine the question, if you haven't asked it already, is where do you dedicate your budgets this year? Is it in this channel, these two channels, these three channels? Do I dedicate more over here or there? Well, that's what we're going to cover today. But the most important thing is that we'll get through to the end, is that it all comes down to one thing, and that's fundamentals of digital marketing, with the right message, to the right audience and in the right places. So I'm very fortunate to be joined by a great team of people this week, the very best of Exposure Ninja. I'm joined by Charlie Marchant, CEO of Exposure Ninja, as well as Tim Cameron Kitchen, Exposure Ninja's founder. How are you both doing?
Really good, thanks, Dale. How are you?
I'm fantastic. Hey, Tim, how are you?
Oh, I'm very well, thanks, Dale. Yes, looking forward to this. It's been a while.
It certainly is. There's going to be a few people in the audience who are very glad to see you once again.
And plenty who are mortified, I imagine. Sorry to disappoint.
Well, I do want to take us straight into discussing what has happened so far. So perhaps, Tim, you can give us a bit of a background into what has really changed in 2024. What are the biggest changes that marketers and marketing leaders should be aware of?
Yeah, for me, I think 2024 was really the year that we saw AI strongly impact web search, as you mentioned in the intro. So ChatGPT grew to 300 million users. That was a 50% increase in the last 5 months of the year. It's now serving 1 billion messages per day by December. These are huge stats. And whilst it's nowhere near as popular as Google's 8.5 billion searches per day, we're really seeing, a sort of the emergence of a genuine competitor to Google for the first time. We also saw Google launch its own AI offerings, and publicly launched AI overviews, and then rolled that out to 1 billion users as well. And then, of course, we've got Apple with Apple Intelligence and Google with Google Gemini. Both major phone platforms now have AI answers built into their sort of on-device search. So this really means that for a lot of us who are marketing, in most of the world, really, our customers are being served generative AI answers to their questions. And therefore, for us as marketers, that means looking forward, we need to be adapting our digital marketing strategies for this world. In the sort of immediate term, 2024, we started seeing clients making sales via ChatGPT traffic. We had inquiries ourselves coming from ChatGPT and Perplexity. We saw a lot of businesses see their referral traffic increase quite significantly from places like ChatGPT and Perplexity. So this really is a sort of a new era of search. Now, that's not to say that Google has gone away or Google is less important. It's still completely dominant, still 90% of global search market share. Its highest ever revenue. Their Q4 and full year earnings call was just this week, I think, or maybe last week. They're all blurring into one at the moment, but highest ever revenue. Google is responsible for 1 billion purchases per day, so they say. But undoubtedly, that lead, that pressure is starting to increase, and I think we're going to see Google having to work harder to generate that revenue through a smaller number of searches as things progress.
Dale, you're mute.
I certainly am on mute. Oh, amateur hour. Charlie, I wonder if there are any kind of other observations in 2024 across like other channels that you think are important for when you're coming in to do a strategy for broader digital marketing this year.
I feel like those are the biggest ones. I do also think just AI integration into all of the platforms, into all of the Google Ads suite. We're going to see it more and more. I think that's going to be happening. I also think we're going to see cross-channel stuff continuing. to happen more like it did last year. You know, we're seeing UGC content and that kind of thing being used in ads all of the time now. And we're also seeing it embedded on websites. We're seeing it featured in content. Like, I think the channels are merging a lot more in people's marketing strategies. And then the other one that I would touch on is personalization. I think that we're seeing a lot more in terms of personalization in the way we search. I mean, just even tools like ChatGPT are even personalized, right, to the way that we're typing into them. We get different answers for different variances in the way that we would ask questions. But we also see that in email marketing, actual really good segmentation of data from CRMs. Like, if you've got that in your CRM, it gives you so much more power in your email marketing to do fun personalization, which is great for the business, great for the users as well, because then they're getting content that's really relevant to them and getting less content that's, you know, actually too generalized for them as well. So I think all of those things are going to push together into next year as well. This year. Here we are.
Very much here.
And next year.
Next year.
Absolutely. I think, Tim, perhaps you can expand a little bit more on that as we kind of shift to talk about this year and the changes we can expect. What are you seeing are going to happen? What are the major things you were expecting are going to happen this year?
I mean, just staying on the whole AI string, I think we're seeing a real progression in the capabilities of these AI tools. And I think we're going to see that continuing. These tools are becoming more sophisticated. So both Google and OpenAI have reasoning models. And these are proving to be really useful when you're in the sort of the research phase of any purchase. And I think we'll start to see those reasoning models integrate more and more with people's searches. I was on Perplexity earlier. Perplexity is probably, I use that as much as Google now, and Perplexity has started using the DeepSeek R1 reasoning model as its default search. I don't want to get too boring here, but basically when you're running a search in Perplexity, it used to do a few web searches and have a look through a few websites. And now, I guess because of the speed and the cheapness of R1, it was serving me answers having reviewed 67, 70, 80 different websites for an answer. And I think as we see these AI tools become more capable, we're going to see that search becomes a little bit more black boxy. And we're not necessarily going to know all of the websites or all of the pages that these tools have used in order to serve us up an answer. Referral traffic from these tools, I think, might actually increase in its commercial intent, because it's now even easier to actually go through quite a lot of the buyer journey in ChatGPT or in Perplexity. And you might find, if you use these tools a lot, that actually the first time you navigate out of the tool is to go and make a purchase. I was doing some examples for a video that we were doing earlier using Perplexity. And, you know, Perplexity wants you to actually check out from the search results page. You can actually, if you're in the US, you can check out, you got US and Perplexity Pro, you can actually check out from the search results page. It will then go and make the purchase on your behalf. So you've got a situation where you could start by knowing nothing about a topic. You could search for some information on Perplexity. That would then take information and data from websites, present you with an answer. You'd learn a bit more, you'd dive into the topic. Eventually you'd ask for a product recommendation, and then you'd go through to make the purchase, all without never leaving the search results page. And I think that's a really interesting opportunity, but also a challenge for marketers that are used to being able to shape the user journey on our own websites. We'll also see an increase of this type of, I guess, agentic behavior. And I know that's a real buzzword in AI, but the whole concept of AI agents, things that can go and do things for us. So we've seen OpenAI tease its operator model, where ChatGPT can not only answer questions, but it can then go and order things for you as well. And it can actually use a browser. And again, I think this is a really interesting time for marketers, where we have to be aware that in the future, it won't just be humans navigating on our websites, it'll be AI tools as well. And what are they using to build their recommendations, and how are they using our websites? Are they finding it easy? Are they getting stuck in the same ways that humans will? So I think this is something that we're going to see rolling out probably with increasing pace in 2025. We're now undoubtedly at this race dynamic stage of AI rollout, where because of the rollout of, because of the release of DeepSeek R1, a lot of the American AI companies are saying, to hell with it. We're just going to release our latest stuff as quickly as possible. Forget about the red teaming for 6 months and all of that. We're just going to roll out stuff as quickly as we can because other people are doing it as well. So I think we'll see an acceleration in the release of some of these tools, which obviously there's implications for the future of humanity. You don't want to get too down on that side of things. So, but for us marketers, we're going to need to stay on top of things and adapt and be ready to adapt quickly if we start seeing our user patterns changing, because this is really quite a extraordinary time to be in marketing, which, by the way, is also going to mean that there's a lot more hype coming through. So there's going to be a lot more for us to filter. But don't worry, we've got you. In Exposure Ninja, we've got you. We'll keep you up to date with the latest stuff that actually matters. So subscribe.
Yeah, we absolutely will. Just one point of evidence about where Google and these other platforms are going to push out stuff as soon as possible. I don't know if you saw last week, Google Search added something called Ask for Me, which is part of Google Business Platform, which basically is a big button for an AI called Google Duplex, which when you click on it, it will go ahead and book an appointment for you with whatever service that is. So if you're searching for an accountant and you want an appointment, click the button, it will do the calling for you. It will call up and ask and book an appointment for you. You just say it's a beauty salon or something like that. It will give you a drop-down list of the different kinds of appointments that they offer. So it's for hair or nails, whatever. You tell it exactly what you want, click the button, and it will come back to you with some available appointment times, or it will book it for you. That's just the first step. That's going to massively impact local SEO, Google Business Profile as like an opportunity platform in SEO as well. And that's just the first bit. Like they said in the earnings call this week, there's all this search stuff that we have ready. It's practically ready to go. And I think they're just holding off for like Google I/O, their big summer thing, to start pushing out some of the biggest things. Because there's like a bit of a sleeping tiger element here. They do have access to all these platforms. And I'm thinking of Amazon too. They have all these platforms, devices in your home that are just waiting for the assistant elements to just be switched on and completely change the way that people shop. And Charlie, I wonder if we've talked previously about customer journeys, buyer journeys. You've had some thoughts about how people's behavior may change in that way and how that's going to impact our strategy for digital marketing too.
Yeah, it's interesting. I think there's two potential ways that people are going to go with this type of thing. I think some people will just be like, yeah, finally, let's get this done. So much less tedious admin in my life, thank goodness. And I think other people are going to quite understandably have data and privacy concerns about, oh my goodness, do I want all of this stuff being done on my behalf? And how much data do they actually have about me? And how is it being used? And et cetera, et cetera. So I think it's going to be interesting to see where the majority of people go. And I think it will just become more integrated into our life and eventually become the norm. But I do think there's going to be some friction in actually getting there for a lot of searchers, for a lot of users, for a lot of people. And I think that's really understandable that people will be like, not that sure how this is working and what privacy concerns are going on. And I think that's, I do actually think being a little bit safety conscious and conservative is a good reaction until tech evolves and you become confident with how it's working. So I think we're going to see two types of users happening there. What do you think, Dale? Do you reckon we'll see the same?
Yeah, I do. I actually want to hand over this question to Tim, because I think Tim's going to handle it better in terms of optimizing your strategy and the platforms that you are on and the website you have, changing them for the agentic part as well. Like there's this type of buyer, there's this second kind of buyer, and there's this third kind of buyer who's the agent who's going to do the work for you. There's like a mixture. And Tim, I imagine you have lots of thoughts about this already.
Well, I actually think even though we're going to be optimizing for agents, we actually still need to optimize for humans. I mean, if you've seen the OpenAI operator demos, it's using a browser based on the visuals of the website. So it's not even looking at the code. It's not like it's crawling through the website and trying to work out where the buttons are. It's actually like looking at the website. So it's trying to mimic human behavior. So I think with a lot of this stuff, we should be okay as long as we're, with web design, for example, as long as we're obeying accessibility standards, and we're using like high enough contrast buttons that these AIs can see the difference between a white and a light gray. But let's be honest, they're going to be better than us at using websites pretty quickly. So yeah, I think it's a really interesting point that Charlie makes about the about certain audience cohorts, I guess, being more cautious. And I think we probably will see Google moving slightly slower on this in search than it is in the Gemini app, for example, recognizing that the people who are using search, a lot of them, they don't really know where the answer is coming from, right? When I watch my wife using, her Google app, and she's searching for something and she sees an AI answer at the top, I'm like, babes, like, where's that coming from? She's like, I don't know, it's just Google, it's just answering my question. Like, she's not seeing that as being any different to a featured snippet, for example. And I think if Google can manage to bring that audience along whilst giving some of the more advanced functionality in, say, the Gemini app or on device, I think it has a chance of sort of catering for the vast majority of people. Then, of course, we'll have, the early adopters who are off using Perplexity and automating every aspect of their life to within an inch. With all the credit card details loaded in there, optimizing their spend, going negotiating with their energy suppliers and all this stuff on their behalf. So I think we will see a splintering, but I think everyone will be gradually moved along by the comforting soft tide that Google's innovator's dilemma provides.
I want to go on to talk about other, platforms, talk about PPC as well. But before we do move on from like the SEO part of the changes we can expect or changes that have happened, I want to talk about very briefly about a study that I spotted just yesterday. So I haven't had a chance to share it around yet, but it's from SEMrush. They're basically talking about intent. So they've been tracking like millions of phrases, conversational search or search queries, whatever we call them, within ChatGPT and similar platforms, and they've basically found that when we are so used to different keyword intent for searches being transactional, commercial, informational, whatever, they found this new one called unknown intent, which is basically people having full-on long conversations where they're not really in a commercial stage, they're not in an informational stage, they're in a I don't know what stage. Like we're still, that person's still trying to figure out the concept of the solution that they're looking for. They're still trying to figure out the problem. There's so much unknown intent for why that person is doing the search, but we know that it's definitely going to happen before they do come to your brand for whatever it is. And I wonder, like, how do we go about this as a digital marketer, as content marketers, as as SEOs? How do we navigate around the intent we can't really be sure about? I'm sorry to drop that question when I haven't really given you time to prep you on it.
I have. Firstly, SEMrush are doing some really cool and interesting studies at the moment. Secondly, on this actual study, which I haven't read, but the unknown search, are those people actually just using ChatGPT for therapy is the question that I'm wondering. Like, are they even really searches with actual intent? Because ChatGPT is brilliant. Like, when you're feeling insecure about something, you just ask it and it gives you the, like, you've got this kind of vibe back. And I think that actually interactions are perhaps not as, I don't think people would ever use Google in that type of way. Like, you wouldn't go to the Google search bar and be like, I'm dealing with this. I'm having this argument with my partner and I really need some advice on how to handle it. It's just not going very well. You would never type that into Google, but you might type that into ChatGPT. And I wonder, this is totally speculation, I wonder how much of the search we're seeing going on in ChatGPT and Gen AI models is not so much the search that we think of classically, as opposed to there is a problem solving part going on that may sometimes have commercial intent, but may sometimes actually not. It's almost just a, like, let's sort of brainstorm and solve this thing that's on my mind together and help me unpick it. But it's interesting that category was called unknown. So without actually knowing any examples, I have no idea.
Yeah, I could. Content.
I bet you're spot on though, because the way that we use a web search is to try and find web content, and there's really only a few different scenarios, a few different sort of discrete use cases for that. Whereas you're right, like an LLM is, it's a much more continuous set of conversations that we could have. However, if I'm selling therapy, like if I'm BetterHelp, I want to make sure I'm optimizing to get recommended in those therapy conversations as well. I'm viewing everything like that as a informational or potentially future commercial intent phrase. But we are undoubtedly going to have a very different relationship with these chat tools than we have with web search. And therefore, I think the web search model of the world isn't always going to apply. It's going to be a little bit wonky. It's not going to quite fit into the whole properly. And for me, categorizing keywords in this way is an example of that. I think another example of that would be keyword search volume, where in web search, lots of people search for plumber in London because we've learned how to use those tools. And we know how to get the best out of Google is to search for a phrase like plumber in London. Whereas with AI, it might be a picture of a broken radiator valve or, something like that. And it's going to be a much broader range of search topics, which mean that when we are trying to work out what to optimize for, we have a much wider range of potential. Like, it's going to be all long tail, right? People aren't just going to be searching for who's the best plumber in London, because they'll get a very crude answer out of that, whereas they'll get a much better answer. The platform will reward them not for asking the simple query. The platform will reward them for asking the complex query. So I think there's a new way of thinking that we need to adopt in some areas when we're thinking about AI search versus web search.
I really think AI search has the potential to quickly become just a conversational tool. Like, if voice search continues to grow in the way that it is and actually get better, I mean, at the moment we've still got, like, you say something's ChatGPT and then 6 seconds later you might finally get a reply from it. But just the fact that you can, and it understands what you're saying, and it can actually give a very good and coherent response to you, I think that will change the way that people are searching, because they'll realize that they can talk so much more broadly. I think already, like you say, Tim, people are using much longer tail, not even just keywords, but whole phrases and explanations in ChatGPT when they are searching for something. That will only continue, a little bit like sending voice notes to your friend, until people find that they're actually 2 minutes in and they haven't even asked the question they were originally going to ask.
Sounds like me. I do also want to cover other platforms, but the last bit is a bit of information I found out just recently in the last, just this week alone. What am I talking about? LLMs, or the studies that have been done, have found that sometimes it can take anywhere from 6 to 9 months to kind of get your brand or make a bigger impact when it comes to like getting your brand inserted into here. You can obviously have a faster impact in some areas like AI overviews, but if there is a 6 to 9 month impact in getting your brand more featured for these different types of intent searches, the kind of work you have to do is immediate, is like now, because if this does take off as much as we all think it is going to, and more people are going to start doing searches in different platforms, if you are playing catch up, then your competitors have already won, and it's going to be really hard for you to kind of catch them up at all. So that's one bit of advice there. In terms of other platforms, I review, are there any that you think, any big changes that we should be aware of, or that have happened or are coming this year, that we should keep in mind when planning out our strategies?
I'm happy to try and segue us out of AI search by taking a diversion through paid search. See, it's out of organic search. Google's earnings call this past quarter was quite interesting. They are seeing still an increase in revenue. Google Shopping had grown 13% year on year. They did $1 billion in ad revenue on Black Friday and Cyber Monday. Like, the numbers are still going up. People are still shopping on Google. There was an analyst question at the end about the monetization of paid search ads in AI overviews, which is something that they started testing last year for the first time, and whether the numbers here were as good as regular search ads. And the guy said something like, yeah, they're monetizing about the same, which for me is, yeah, they're not monetizing quite as well. But I think the other impact of AI searches will probably get fewer searches. So if the ads are monetizing about the same in AI overviews as they were in old search, then Google could be looking at a drop in revenue unless it finds other ways to monetize that traffic, or just hikes the prices if the traffic is better quality. So I think we will see Google working harder to squeeze more revenue out of, because Google's share price dropped after they'd increased their revenue, because it didn't quite hit expectations. So I think we're going to see Google having to work harder to squeeze more revenue out of us advertisers for fewer searches. And that might mean that CPCs go up, or it has to come up with other ways to insert ads into AI searches. But I think PPC is here to stay. We're even seeing, Aravind Srinivas, the CEO of Perplexity, talking about running ads that AI agents would see in order to recommend your products. So running ads that aren't even for humans, they'd be, for AI agents. I think that's maybe a little way off, but we will see these companies get more creative with advertising as maybe some of that search revenue starts to go into AI tools as well.
I also have more of information and data to share on this one, because I just so happened to be reading last night about another study that somebody else has done. Can't remember the name of the company, but once I found it, I'll link in the podcast notes, which you can get at exposureninja.com/podcast. And they're basically talking about the comparison between organic click-through rate when there isn't an AI overview and there is. And the same for paid, the click-through rate for paid ads when there is or isn't an AI overview shown. And they were shown basically, you've got like a 3 to 4% click-through rate when there's no AI overview. When there is, it's like 0.5, 0.6%. Like it really drops, which kind of backs up what we've been saying for all of these strategy podcasts and sessions is, fine, we understand that the click-through rate is going to be lower, but you still got to put your brand to be in that list, because there's going to be a next step in that search journey, that buyer journey, that is going to be based on somebody seeing that and going, that brand, I like that one sounds nice, I'll do my monetary searches, my commercial searches elsewhere. And the same for paid click-through rate is lower when there's an AI overview, but because of all these changes, because there are people doing these searches on different platforms or in AI overviews, they're going to rely heavily upon paid to get that click when it finally happens, because not every business is going to be able to feature in the AI overview or whatever the search results look like as more AI is pushed into it. So paid is like a necessity going forward, because it's not only going to be hard to rank in these new versions of the search results, but yeah, you're going to have unfortunately I can see their ad revenue going way up, because more people are going to be like, oh, where's all the traffic I used to have?
I feel like people are going to be going like, oh, why are these CPCs going up and my budget is like being spread so thin? I think the stress is going to come before.
I suppose what Google will be hoping, though, is if all of the research is done by the AI piece, that the click is basically ready to make a purchase. So it's much less of a researchy click and would have a higher commercial intent. Whether that actually plays out, I don't know. But if you had, let's say you're converting at 4% on a PPC ad at the moment, if that went up to 20%, you might pay 5x the CPC. If it was a really qualified click, I think going back to first principles, people are still going to buy the same number of things, aren't they? We're not going to not go on holiday anymore because the AI overview can give us the full holiday itinerary, right? We may even buy more things, and I think that's what Google is kind of hoping. So it's just, how do we get the people who are ready to make the purchase? And plan A for Google would obviously be for those people to have to go to your website via a PPC ad rather than organically.
Okay, so we talked about the changes that we can expect across a couple of different platforms. Obviously, SEO, with it being the biggest traffic driver for most businesses, we can understand that it's where our priorities should be. But what do we know to be working today in terms of digital marketing playbooks? And who would like to go first on this one?
Oh, I can take this one. I feel like the thing that we still know is working really well and that was pushed even harder last year is EEAT in our content. Actually bringing that expertise, experience, authority, and trustworthiness to content. All of the updates, pretty much all of the updates that happened last year, is just continuing to push against low quality, crappy, parasite SEO content, and still pushing harder and harder into good quality content, personalized content, stuff that's actually interesting for people to read. So I think we're just going to continue to see more of that in 2025. And with more people considering writing their blog posts through ChatGPT, etc., I think we're going to need it as well to actually differentiate all of the yarns that could be spun and maybe shouldn't be.
Well said. Yeah, I actually think a lot of the digital marketing playbooks still work today. I mean, even weirdly, I think there's an argument to say that SEO has potentially gone backwards in some regards. Like when you do a search on Perplexity, for example, you're searching this really long tail complex query, and then you see what it breaks it down to, and it's searching for something like, I don't know, best iPhone cases 2025. And I'm like, really? We're back here again? These are like sort of exact match article topics from 2013. Like, here we are. This is the thing that this search is going to do. And then it's taking the content out. So I don't actually think any of the fundamentals have changed here. We've just added another layer of AI optimization, which needs to go onto SEO. And then, of course, we've seen digital PR, I think, come back with a bang, right? Digital PR had kind of turned into basically just pure link building, just trying to get attention for random stunts and publicity, desperate publicity attempts for doing crazy things. And, whether it's like, I don't know, yeah, I don't want to talk about specific campaigns, but stuff that had absolutely nothing to do with the business. Whereas digital PR, the 2024 plus version, is about getting your brand, your products and services featured in the sorts of articles that are then being referenced by these AI tools when they're making recommendations to a customer. So I think that side of things is really big. And the recommendations that we put together in the digital PR book that you wrote, Charlie, with Luke in like 2016, was that? All you can run that playbook today, and it is really powerful and sets you up for an AI world. So it's a kind of weird time where we've got like old stuff's working and new stuff's working. You just sort of need to do all of it, really.
It's true. I always think that digital PR's got a bit of a bad rap, actually, and everyone does think of like those haywire stunts of Brewdog and whoever else who are doing really outrageous things as what PR is. But actually, really good digital PR is actually really relevant to your brand, and like it comes in the right places, about your business, about things related to your business, online, elsewhere, about the charities your business supports, the things that you do and are passionate about as a business owner or as a CEO, a CMO, whatever your role in the business is, and the things that you want to talk about and should be talking about. And I think sometimes people almost overcomplicate the concept of PR as in needing to be this like really big and shiny, expensive, fancy thing. And it's like it's actually just like talking about your business and yourself and what you do well in places that actually kind of matter to your audience and to your customers.
And even that values type thing, I think, is really interesting. If we end up in a world where, which I think we will, where these tools know us and they know our preferences, then potentially, like you were saying earlier, we're going to see a much more personalized set of recommendations, which will include things like the causes that you're aligned to. If I'm choosing an iPhone case, I might optimize for sturdiness. Someone else might optimize for appearance. Someone else might optimize for, carbon impact, for example. And if the best search is going to take into consideration our own choices and our own preferences and serve us results which are personalized to those, and then all of a sudden that page about the fact that you plant loads of trees, you offset all of the transport costs in the business, all of that type of stuff is then ingested by these AI tools that are doing 60, 200, 500 pages of research in order to serve you the best iPhone case recommendation. All of that stuff becomes even more important than ever, not just in a sort of a fluffy, oh yeah, it'd be nice to find a company that aligns my values thing, but because the AI tools like, I need to find an iPhone case which has minimal carbon impact because that's what Charlie wants. So all of that stuff becomes more important. If that's what you wanted, Charlie.
Which is true, because I only get ads for Pillowcase, which they clearly know me. Oh, Dale, you're muted again.
No. I pressed the thing. My computer's playing up today. Sorry, everyone. So I was thinking a little bit about what you're saying about the different kinds of campaigns that you can do. There are, they vary from very serious to very unserious, very surreal. The main thing I think about digital PR is that you can do this kind of silly campaigns that kind of cause a bit of a buzz, but use digital PR to kind of be an amplifier to that. And you can tell more people about it, and it does kind of by association. If it is about your product, like I'm thinking of one of our clients did a pretty funny release of one of their products just this past week or the past 10 days, and it's super relevant to their product, and it's done in a fun way. Like it's a new product development, and it's just great. It's just really, really smart, and the digital PR can be there to amplify it, so you can get talked about in different kind of places. But I wonder, for the businesses that don't necessarily off the bat think that they have a story to tell or data to go out there and do some data-based storytelling, what they can do, and if we have any examples of I'm thinking of one of our legal clients who took some data that was already out there. I don't know if one of you would like to expand on what they did there. Otherwise I can.
Yeah, sure, I can. I think there's lots you can do with data, and often businesses don't even realize the data that they've got. Sometimes, actually, one of the things we do quite early on if we're doing a PR campaign is talk to the client about the kinds of things that they might track, or the data they might have in their business, or what the kinds of things they know about their industry. Because often, even if they don't have any data that would actually be useful for a PR campaign, which in itself is fairly rare, but it is possible, they usually know stuff about their industry. So the example you're talking about, Dale, for one of our legal clients was like traffic accident reports, which are done regionally, and being able to take a bunch of data from traffic accident reports, which is relevant to this specific niche of client that we're talking about, and make those interesting, and actually publish that data, pull out interesting facts and figures that are relevant to the business, relevant to the kinds of customers and clients that they work with. And sometimes actually publish it first, because you can request data as well. You can make data requests in the UK and the US too. Or if the data is already published, gosh, sometimes people do publish things in a boring way, don't they? And you think, you've downloaded something that's just black text on a white background, you may as well, like they didn't have a design team. But if you've actually got someone who can do a bit of design and make it look really nice, then you can present data in a really compelling and interesting way for your PR, even if it's not your own data.
I think and you're absolutely right. There's organizations like the Office of National Statistics in the UK that just spend vast amounts of money producing the most boring data in the world. And all you need to do is go and try and work out the story that sort of wraps that, right? And yeah. I think sometimes it can help. Some of our most creative digital PR campaigns that have stayed relevant to the business have found like a sort of a trending topic and then figured out the link to the business. So, we've got Ron on the call, and Ron is an absolute master, one of the world's best at making beautiful lawns, right? And let's say that Ron was really passionate about climate change. Well, he might be able to find some data somewhere that shows that certain types of grass seed are doing better than they were in certain areas, and link this to climate change. Or maybe there's a certain time of year that you have to fertilize, and that's been moving over the years. Like, you can usually, if you find a topic that you're interested in, you can usually wangle an angle somewhere. And there are people who are really good at this. We've got some amazing people on the team who can find an angle out of almost nothing. There are some of us that really struggle with this, but it's usually in there somewhere. There is always a story in the data somewhere if you look at it enough, and you maybe throw in a sort of an outside influence, a different filter to look at it across.
Yeah, love you, Ron. It's another pair of eyes can be really, really helpful. So we talked a little bit about playbooks, and I imagine this is something we could go on and talk about a lot. But the main idea of this session is to talk about how to put a strategy together from all the different options that are available to us. So I don't know how you want to go about this in terms of how do we create it out of scratch. What would you recommend, or do we pick a fictional business to do it for? And Tim, I think I'll hand over to you on this one because you've got quite a few ideas.
Well, I think the tempting thing is to go to the tool and say, right, our strategy this year is ChatGPT, and that is very tempting. It's probably also where I would go, and then I'd fight myself back to come to the customer. Finding out where let's start with an audience, let's start with a person that we want to sell to. And if you can break it down to an individual, that'll be absolutely great, because then you can model against that person. So where are they going to discover? Where are they going to learn? Where are they going to choose products? And then let's just keep it really simple. How do we get there? right? So if they're going on to ChatGPT and they're having these long conversations, which are sort of part therapy, part commercial, and it ends up with them wanting to buy a massage or, a holiday or whatever, then we need to go and be there, and we need to work out what that conversation flow looks like. If they're spending all their time on YouTube, well, we need to go there and, make sure we're being found there. So I think really the key to building a strategy for this year, as much as anything, is like, let's put the tools, don't start with the tools first, right? We need to start with the customer first and then just build around them. And I think as long as we do that, it's actually fairly straightforward, and we don't have to do too much that's particularly different than normal. Once we've found out where they are, yes, of course, we need to understand the platforms. We need to understand how those platforms are changing, and how to make the most of Google Ads if it's showing up in AI overviews and all of that. But let's start first with the customer. If we don't do that, we can end up optimizing for ChatGPT and realize actually, there's 15 searches a month on ChatGPT. This whole thing's been a complete waste of time. We should have just stuck to Google Ads or whatever, right? So that would be my advice to sort of start with this. And of course, before you do any of that, you need to go to exposureninja.com and request a free website marketing review if you're interested in working with us, because we can help you with this stuff. And like Dale said earlier, it's really good to have a sort of second pair of eyes on this. So if you're interested in working with us, not everyone is eligible, so you do need to apply, but you can just go to exposureninja.com/review for that. Anything to add, Charlie and Dale?
Yeah, I was just going to build on that, because I think the customer is the most important thing. And sometimes it's really easy to get carried away in the marketing mix or even the business of, what are we selling? And rather than who are we actually trying to sell to, and what do they need? What do they want? How are they going to benefit from this? And how do we give them something that's useful and interesting? I feel like the first step, once you really know your customer, is thinking about your positioning. And I actually think this is one of the hardest things for CMOs and people within businesses to do when they're in that business, because you're so ingrained in being in your own business, you almost can't see the wood for the trees anymore. And it's so important to actually get your position in the market of what you are right and who you're for, so that actually when you are going to all these platforms like you're talking about, Tim, and finding your searchers, your users, your customers where they are, you're also saying something that's relevant, and you have an offer that is interesting and compelling to them. And I feel like for our strategies, a lot of the foundational work we do with businesses is making sure that actually they have some kind of compelling offer on their website, some kind of CTA that's going to get people in, a low commitment one, perhaps a more high commitment one, so that they can actually start funneling those customers into their marketing. Because what you don't want to be doing, and I think that the biggest trap, is you just start throwing your budget into Google Ads, or you start going really aggressively on SEO, and then you do eventually get people coming to your website and they're just not even really sure, like, what do I do here? Where am I going? What has this business got? Because it's so easy for a searcher to just think there's no route for me here, and exit the page and go somewhere else.
I think another major problem is like what you're highlighting. A lot of the problems that we kind of come across with some of the people that speak to is that because the positioning is not clear, the messaging is not clear, they are just spending a lot of money on ads that bring through like just time wasting, ineligible, not valuable leads for them. And there's nowhere for you to really go on it. You spend a lot of money. Sometimes these cost per clicks can be £50, £100, even more, depending on if you're service based or for some businesses, CPC may be massive, and you just spend it on someone who was literally just looking for somebody to come and clean their flat. They weren't looking for a commercial business cleaner or something like that, where the spend will be much higher. It's a complete waste of the budget and whoever's time to set that up.
Great example.
But let's say we've got our positioning sorted, unless you have anything else to share on positioning too. Oh.
I'm muted. No, I completely agree with everything Charlie said. And I think actually the positioning piece becomes even more important as we move into an AI world where your business's messages may not even be read first by a human. They may be translated by an AI tool to the consumer. So if you're not absolutely pinpoint on what you want to be known for and how you want to be presented, and when the AI tool looks across the internet, it sees you being mentioned as, I always use this example of The Ordinary, one of our clients. If you search for Claude, best value skincare brands, now Claude doesn't go online, but it always recommends The Ordinary because The Ordinary and Great Value are linked. And they're linked in so many places online that Claude immediately goes, oh, you want good value skincare? The Ordinary. And I think that's what we should all aspire to, having such crystal clear positioning that whether it's a human or an AI tool who does research about our industry, they know which messages to communicate to our potential customers. And we know that those messages are going to resonate enough for those potential customers to want to buy as a result.
I can't help but put myself in a position of someone who's a marketing leader who is like, yeah, but I know search volume. I've been, I understand it. I get it. My boss gets it. It took me 5 years to convince them to follow search volume as a metric, and and organic traffic. What we're saying is completely, I can't say this word. I'm going to try anyway. Antithesis. The opposite. That word. I should ask ChatGPT. The complete opposite. What we're saying is focus on pain points and positioning and things like that. How do marketing leaders make that switch? That's a huge internal buy-in project that needs to be done. And how do we go about it? Or is it necessary? And who'd like to field that? Who'd like to take that?
Well, is the question, what about search volume?
Well, it's more like what we're saying is, we believe that searches are still going to happen, that people are still going to be using all these different platforms, and that Google is still going to have 90% share of the market. It might get dipped to 87, 85%, whatever. It's still going to expect that. We can guarantee that search traffic is still coming through in some form or another. And you might need to do paid to acquire some of those that you used to get for free. I think that's pretty much where we're at. But when we're thinking about it, we've always thought of it in, I'm going to make these content decisions around search volume. I'm going to make these, for all my content, for my website, for my key pages, for my knowledge base, even for choosing a video topic, I'm going to check the search volume on YouTube before doing so, and so on. And I think that's the way that a lot of marketers really think, especially the higher up we go. You're telling me you want to dedicate your budget to doing more SEO when I'm hearing on the grapevine between my other marketing leaders that there's this big thing called AI that I should be more scared of than SEO. Why should I continue to give you budget? Why should I continue? Why shouldn't I put it into paid, which is fairly more reliable? Not that, it can have its tricky ifs and buts, not sure. But why should I continue to do that when potentially that's not the same playbook anymore? That's what I'm saying. How would you help these market leaders to make that internal pitch to say this is still the thing to do?
I think it's really difficult because, when we spoke at the B2B show, one of the requests from the marketing manager was, my CEO, they say it with an exasperated look on their face. My CEO's on ChatGPT all day, and they've said to me, can you get us ranking on here? Can you get us showing up on here? Right. And the answer is yes. And we're going to continue focusing on where 90% of searches are happening on Google until there's a bigger switch, until keywords are no longer relevant, until search volume is no longer relevant. You have to keep working on that because billions and billions of dollars, a billion people are making purchases through a billion purchases, are being made through Google every day. If you want to win, you absolutely have to be there. But you also have to prepare for the future with ChatGPT. And that's about understanding customer pain points. That's about talking to enough people that you understand the phrases that they use, even if they're not quite keyword searchy type search volume. So I think it's a both for the foreseeable future where web search is still a thing. We still need to play the old SEO game or the current SEO game. Let's not call it the old SEO game, but we also need to play the GEO game. So it's a difficult conversation to have because it means that you're going to be a little bit stretched. But, I don't want to tell you. I wish I had better news. I wish it was easy. Actually, don't wish it was easy. Wish you were stronger, right? And I think the great thing is that a lot of competitors won't play the GEO game. They're still trying to catch up with SEO. So this is an opportunity with first mover advantage for the next, probably year. to really get some visibility in these places. So yeah, just view this as an opportunity.
I think there's plenty of businesses whose CEOs aren't like, oh, let's follow GEO. I've spoken to CEOs in totally the opposite camp of that, who are like, oh, sorry, how much share of search has Google lost? Oh, only a couple of percentage points. Well, like, let's not worry about that right now, because here and now, more than 90% is happening on Google. So that's where our budget is going, which I totally understand that sort of short-term thinking as well. But I think ideally people are doing a percentage of both, right? The 80-20, 80% on the here and now, where are my customers coming from right now? And there's always 20% on the future, like where are they going to be coming from in the future? And I think, yeah, there is no ideal way of saying that, yeah, everyone's a bit stretched with marketing because there are so many channels. So I think you do the best you can with what you've got.
Yeah.
Yeah, the cost of inaction is greater than the cost of action. Like, doing nothing is not going to help you get there. I want to stay on this a little bit longer and see if we've got time for any questions. Maybe pick one or two on the building an unbeatable digital marketing strategy, a perfect one. How, when we are dedicating our budget and allocating to different areas, we're saying SEO and GEO as primary focus. Are there any other channels that you think that are worth keeping, or maybe some worth jettisoning, or what do you think?
I think for me, it really goes back to the customer and where they're spending their time. Like AI, SEO, all of these things are relevant if that's where your customer is finding, or if that's where your customer is searching for you. Like, if honestly though, if you're selling, I don't know, skincare, I don't know, not skincare necessarily, but let's say you're selling, I don't know, CBD supplements, or like face peel patches, or something that's clearly a TikTok offering. Well, you don't want to say, right, screw TikTok, because I've heard that ChatGPT and AI search is going to be the thing. You got to start from your customer, and you got to know your customer well enough to know where they're spending their time. Kind of the amount of time that your customer is spending when they're in the mode to look for you should pretty much mirror where you're spending your marketing activity. So if they're spending like 90% of their time doing research for this stuff on TikTok and YouTube, then you probably know you want to spend 90% of your marketing resource being on TikTok and YouTube, making sure that you're being found there. Whereas if you're selling like mortgage advice or something like that, it's probably not the sort of thing that people are going on, X to find. It might be, there's going to be some mortgage advisor who's absolutely blowing up on X, whatever. But that type of thing is more the sort of thing that's going to be a lot more search focused. So I think your marketing priorities have to match your audience's time. And I don't think that there's any channels that have actually died really as a result of any of this AI stuff in the last couple of years. I don't know, maybe I might be wrong. I mean, certainly, X, if you care about brand safety, then X is probably not the one. So that might have sort of semi-died. But other than that, I mean, no one advertised on X anyway, right? So targeting's always been horrendous. Now it's horrendous and filled with hate. But other than that, I think it's all still, everything's in play.
Yeah. And what I like about the suggestions you both made is kind of, doing a bit of a bet and just go with the project. And maybe what I would recommend is doing it think of it in a quarterly basis. Like, this is in this first quarter, we're going to try and experiment with just trying to rank for one thing, one phrase, one conversation in ChatGPT, and then we'll scale it up from that point, or a phased approach. I'll do 3-5 pages, they'll be the priority, and phase 2 will be expanding it we'll then try and do it for Perplexity. Then the third phase will be like, okay, I want to make sure that it works in the voice search of whatever platform. The new assistant that comes out is guaranteed to come out this summer. You heard it here first. Google is going to release a whole new assistant, I'm telling you now, this summer. But any final thoughts on strategy before we maybe just pick up one question?
My only final thought, sort of adding on to what Tim was saying, is I think a little bit of consideration needs to go into not just putting tiny bits of budget and investment into like loads of different channels. I think that's the temptation, and it's almost like an actual indecision to do that, rather than to put the majority bulk of your budget into the areas that are going to deliver returns for you. Like, if you've got a little bit going into Instagram, you've got a little bit going into search, you've got a little bit into Google Ads, and then you're thinking like, oh, I've got all these little like not only are lots of little pots hard to manage, but they're also not going to be performing really well. And what you actually want to see is, okay, what is showing good progress markers, what is actually going to perform well. And I think go harder on the channels that do work for you. And yeah, have a little bit of fun and do a little bit of experimenting. But actually, you don't need to be the business that does every single marketing channel. Like if you've posted to Facebook for 6 months and you're not getting anything back from it, go somewhere else, do something else, try something different until you actually do see where you're getting customers from.
Totally. There's a B2B SaaS company that I respect their marketing and often like point to them as like I really admire what they're doing. They went for a brand refresh, and I went to their Facebook page. They have not even updated the branding there because they just said that Facebook is just not for us. We're not doing it. I'm not even going to update the logo from the old logo. Just leave it alone. Put all of our efforts into this, these few channels, because our client just doesn't come through that way. Like LinkedIn is the place to be for us, and that is it. Like we don't really care about the other ones. Okay. Very briefly, going to touch on this one question, which is Sergio was saying, basically summarize this idea as a bit of a question. So this is from the description of this live session, which is, despite the changes and complexity of digital marketing today, the fundamentals of what drive results have remained the same. So I don't know who'd like to kind of summarize it up, but I can take it. I'm happy to.
Yeah, go for it.
Cool. Well, it's basically this. You got to have the right message for the right market, the right platforms, at the right time. You just go back to the fundamentals. You don't need anything more than that. Just know exactly what to say, how to say it, where to say it, and you'll be pretty well covered. And I think, as Charlie just said there, pick one thing to do that well, expand into another thing, expand. That's how I would summarize that. So maybe one question. Let me have a little look what we've had. So
we've got 3 minutes, right? We've got 3 minutes, 3 questions.
Okay.
Challenge accepted.
So Kim asked, Kim asked, how is this going to affect Google Ads on websites, for example, when generative tools take you straight to payment and are skipping the actual websites?
That revenue model long term is doomed. There you go. Next question.
A nutshell.
Like display ads, right? Google's display ad revenue was down this year again. I think that model is really tough to make pay. I think a lot of the sites that use that ad model, if they can become the sources for these answers, so take I was looking at one of our clients, for example. We got them recommended #1 in Perplexity for best iPad Air case because we got them in an article on ZDNet. So if ZDNet is relying on ad revenue for their monetization, long term, that's going to be difficult. But if they are somehow monetizing the fact that their article is being pulled through to Perplexity and leading to a recommendation, there's a lot of money to be made there. So that's what I'd say on that. Next one.
Superb. Okay. Who'd like to take this one?
Yeah, well, we've got a great one from Ron, which is, what percentage split of your marketing budget would you do between content and link building or digital PR? What would you recommend? I think this depends a lot on the business and where you are, particularly with your SEO content and PR sort of as a whole. And I think for a lot of businesses who perhaps are not super strong in search, if your rankings are not as brilliant as they could be, focus much more heavily on your on-site content. And actually, once you've got lots of really interesting content on your site, if you feel like you're generally ranking quite well about against your competitors about the key terms, the keywords you most care about, that's a really good time to actually start link building. And you can still keep a percentage of that new content going on your website, as you should do, and particularly also updating old content to increase the actual authority, expertise, etc. within that is really important too. And I feel like once you're doing really, really well on site, push more and more into link building and off site, but never fully kill doing one over the other. I think you want to have both going simultaneously.
Just to take this one a little bit further, I think that when you do reach a point where you've got a good solid base of content and you've done some solid link building, you're starting to reach a point where, it's margins. I think there's at that point you can kind of look into, maybe from a business point of view, product expansion, start to add new categories and then build them up, or a new product line or something like that, that may be able to kind of expand how much turnover your business is doing generally. Then again, if you do the SEO research beforehand, you might see the competitor space is not difficult to get within the first 5 results, maybe get to third or first in the first 6 to 12 months, depending on what that category is. So that might be an opportunity if you feel like you're doing some solid work when it comes to on-site content, off-site link building. Let's add a new area where we can expand into. Last question then. I don't know who wants to take this one. So the question was, does ChatGPT AI search prioritize the websites that rank higher on Google for their info? What factors does it consider picking the info source, if not EEAT, which is experience, expertise, authority, and authoritativeness and trustworthiness?
Yeah, I think this is a very, very long topic. ChatGPT doesn't use Google's index, we don't think. We actually have a video all about ChatGPT ranking factors, which I will post in the chat for you, which answers this question in detail. That's probably a better source. But basically, it looks at regular SEO rankings and then optimization for AI tools as well.
And I'll make sure that's in the show notes as well, which will be at exposureninja.com/podcast. You'll be able to find this episode or this live session, as well as the other 5 or 6 that we've done. There'll be a playlist that you can listen to, all of them for SEO, GEO, generative engine optimization, paid search, and so on. We've got some more episodes coming up. The next one is going to be next Thursday, Friday 13th, same time, same place. And it's going to be about how to copy an impactful brand marketing strategies. This could be very useful when trying to get inserted into ChatGPT and places like that, because brand is big in 2025. Thanks everyone for joining us, and see you all next Thursday. Take care.